Hey everybody. So, been a really long time since I've done some audio vlogs. Like to try to get into it a little bit more. I get a lot of emails about what I'm doing on the Boyce Avenue stuff with the Cajon and acoustic guitar and vocals and those things. And I really appreciate all the emails. It's really great, and hopefully I've been able to help out anybody that has emailed me. And I wanted to show maybe a bit more video-wise what I'm doing. It's kind of hard over email sometimes to show that stuff. So, but with these, I wanted to be able to do, not only show what I'm doing, you know, in the microphone side of things, but also in Pro Tools, what I'm doing with plugins and mixing and things like that. So I'm going to incorporate that into these vlogs a little bit. And if you've seen some of my older vlogs, true to form, I am drinking some Bouchon. Although before it was Grand Marnier, Bouchon is a little cheaper and tastier, I believe. It's delicious. At any rate, let's go ahead and, oh, by the way, at the Boyce Avenue studio, 3-piece studios, absolutely gorgeous. It's coming out so good. We're really done with it at this point, but it's just a great place to work. I am so happy to be in here. So happy to be working with Boyce Avenue, by the way. If you haven't heard their stuff, go to their channel, youtube.com/Boyce Avenue. You can hear all of the stuff that we've done and the stuff that I've worked on. And since I'm also doing the video stuff now, there might be a point where I start getting into some of the vlogs, going into more of the video aspect of the work. So anyway, this episode, we're going to talk about the Cajon. I want to go into what I'm doing microphone-wise. I've already done the Cajon in the past, but since I'm in a new studio, we're using different microphones. I may as well just do the whole thing and just start from there. So let's go out into the studio. I'll show what I'm doing microphone-wise. We'll come back in and we'll talk about the mix stuff. Sounds good. We're walking into the live room and there's the Cajon. So if you've seen my previous vlog on Cajon, you will notice that not much has changed. I have 3 microphones set up, 2 in the front and the 1 in the back. Now, let's take a look here. The 1 in the back, oh, real quick, before we even get into that, the Cajon, I want you to notice that I am setting it on the wood floor. Now, I have tried it on the carpet, and in other studios where I've recorded Cajon where it was completely dead with carpet, it did not sound good. In fact, it sounds just dead and lifeless. But, you know, if you move it to a surface where you can get some of these really quick early reflections and give it some life, really brings out the sound of the Cajon. So I did try it on the carpet. It did not sound good. And so I ended up moving it over the wood so I could get just a bit more life out of it. So whenever you do have the chance, and really this is very dependent on the room you're in, of course, but a more livelier room does tend to lend itself to more percussive instruments. So in the back, I've got this Audx D6. There he is. Now, I don't have cables on any of these mics just because I'm showing this as a demonstration. But so if you look inside the Cajon, and maybe we can't really see very well in there, but the snares are near the top of the box. So I'm going to take this microphone, I'm going to stick it on in there. There we go. And I'm going to point it down toward the bottom corner of that Cajon in there. Now, that guy is just getting my kick drum sound and my low end. I don't care about the snares for him. In fact, when you see in Pro Tools, I'm actually going to roll off the high end of that thing, and he's basically just getting the low end. Now, these 2 guys are Audio-Technica 5045s. It's a newer line that they have. If you saw my Cajon vlog before, I had Audio-Technica 4060s, which I still use a lot. I still use them on vocals especially, and they're great sounding microphones. What I like about these is they don't have their own power supply, which is just easier for setup. I have no issues with these. I've been using these on acoustic guitar as well. So really great sounding microphones. Now, these are set just far enough away to where the player's hands aren't going to hit them, but as close as I can get without them actually hitting them. So if you see this microphone, this bottom one, focus, is actually pointed this way. And then this one is pointed straight ahead. Basically, this is a XY pattern to where you're getting a good stereo image, but no phasing, or very minimal phasing, which is great. The Cajon itself isn't necessarily a stereo instrument, but with the acoustics in the room and the box itself, it can be, I mean, you hear it in a stereo way with your ears. So this is really just kind of capturing it as if you were standing right in front of it. And for me, it works really well. You know, whether or not you agree with that, I don't know. But for me, that's how I record it. Now, if you only have one microphone, that's tough. And you really got to balance out what you're going to be looking for. If there's nobody else in the room and you're just tracking a Cajon, I would say you put it in the front and you just put it toward the front of the, you know, just point it directly in front of the head of the Cajon. And, you know, then you put some reverb on it and try to make it sound as good as you can. But if you're dealing with two, this is the setup I would use, you know. And then if you find with either one of those one microphone or two microphone setup techniques, you need more low end, well, you can either, you know, duplicate, copy a track and just roll it off and bump the low end, or you can actually trigger a kick drum or an 808 on those kick hits that the player is using in order to get that low end. So those are a couple of solutions to use. So yeah, I think that kind of covers everything. Let's go into the studio and then we'll look at some of the plugins and mix stuff. We've taken a look at what's going on out in the live room. Let's see what's going on inside Pro Tools. This song is Boyce Avenue's cover of The Greatest by Sia. I really love the way the Cajon came out in this song, so I thought this would be a good one to use for this example. These three tracks are my Cajon tracks. The first two are the Audio-Technica 5045s that were out there, and this last one is that one in the back, the Audx D6. I'm running the Audio-Technica 5045s through an API preamp and into a Lavery Blue converter, which is going digitally into Pro Tools. And this other one is going into a tube preamp and into the Avid HD converters. Let's just take a quick listen. I'm free to be the greatest. So let's just take a look here. Alright, so that's what our Cajon sounds like with everything on it, all the plugins and reverbs. So as you can see, I've got my Cajon reverb up here. I've got the Cajon sub track, which is what these three are going into, and these are my three tracks, of course. So you notice I have some bypassed or some inactive plugins here, which I clearly wasn't using. Not sure what I was actually using them for, but let's take those off. All right, so I do have some plugins on this this back microphone, this Audx. This has got an EQ on it, which is just the Pro Tools EQ, and I'm just rolling off high end. As you can see here, I'm rolling off quite a bit, 12 dBs with down to 917 hertz, and you can see the slope here. And then looks like I'm dipping just a little bit of low end out here, 3.5 dBs at 116 with this Waves Q6 or Q8, sorry. So let's take a listen to just that microphone, and I'm gonna bypass all of my other stuff so we can hear this guy nice and dry as is. So it's a little low to hear, but so that's what it sounds like without these on. But since I said already that all I wanted to do was use this as a low-end microphone, I'm just gonna keep those on to keep that nice and rolled off. Let's take a look at these other two. Okay, now these are those two microphones, and you can see I've got those panned left and right. That's both of them mono. So it gives a nice little stereo image. This is with the kick drum, without, with. So you can see this adds nice little substance down at the bottom there. So let's take a look at what I'm actually doing now in the mix on the subgroups. So I've got a Slate virtual mix rack going as my first plugin, and from there I've got a virtual channel on there, which looks like the Brit In, which would be their Neve, an SSL pre EQ, and a Neve EQ. You can see that I'm doing a little bit of 1.3 dBs at 2.32 kilohertz with a slightly wider bell shape on it, and then just 0.37 dBs of this high end, and 0.37 dBs of 4.07 kilohertz, and 2 dBs at 483 hertz. So these are doing some pretty minor things, but let's take a listen to what they're doing. Cool. Let's see what's next. Okay, this is the SSL channel strip, which is by SSL, part of the Duende. Let's take a look at what we're doing here. Just more high end. I've said this before, I think in other previous vlogs about EQing. If something needs a lot of high end, which it probably does, I'm not going to crank one EQ up 6 or 7 dBs because it gets weird. But I will do several dBs via 2, 3, 4 EQs if needs be. So for instance, on this, we were doing, a little bit of mid-range boost at 1.3. Here we're doing just a smidge of high end. And granted, this EQ, this Neve EQ, has a different sounding characteristic, which is why I'm using a different EQ, because it sounds a little bit different when I'm boosting that high end. And when I use this SSL one from Duende, the high end on this actually sounds a little bit different as well. So on this one, as you can see, I've got the E series inserted, and then I've got 1.8 dBs at 5 kilohertz and 2 at 9.7. So let's take a look at those. Now here's both. Cool. So you can see those are kind of just doing some added high end, give a little bit more presence, and overall, looks like here I had a R1 compressor I was trying at some point and I didn't use it, so I'm just going to remove that. I have a bad habit of keeping plugins, and you can see another one down here that I don't use, but I just end up making them inactive and don't put them back in or take them out. So the next plugin in the line here is another EQ. As you can see, I've got 4 EQs basically running on this Cajon subgroup. So this one's I'm doing some notch filtering, right around 200 hertz. Let's see, yeah, minus 13.4 dBs at 183 hertz with a really small notch. And this is the track plug by Wave Arts, which I really do like this plugin. If I need to do more, which you can see here, I'm doing some more notch filters. I like this Q series by Wave as well. Those are really great. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. So you can see it just kind of cuts into that low end a little bit, just to kind of clean it up a little bit. You know, when you're listening to this solo, I mean, you're not mixing a cajon or any other instrument solo for the most part. It's how it interacts and mixes with the other instruments. So most of the time, I wouldn't just be cutting some of these things or boosting some of these things without hearing these in the mix itself. So well, let's do that real quick. So whether or not you know, you're really able to hear what's going on with this notch filter, but that was just a demonstration of like what this is doing inside the mix itself, and it kind of cleans it up because it moves out of the way a little bit for some of the low end in the guitar and the vocals. So let's take a look at what's next here. This is, as I said a second ago, the Q8 by Waves. I'm doing a few different things on here. Minus 8.5 at 375, minus 6.5 at 733, and minus 4.2 at 22 kilohertz. Let's take a look at what's going on there. So it's just kind of cleaning up a little bit of the mid-range that's in there. Let's take a look at what else. All right. Okay, this is the C1 compressor sidechain by Waves. I love this thing. I use this on almost every track that I have. Well, that's not really true, but I use it a lot. It's great because it almost works as just a selective notch filter. I use this on acoustic, I use this on vocals, and I use it on a cajon. So you can do, so at this point I'm doing 252 hertz, and it's got a really tight band here. Let's take a look at what this guy's doing. So you can see, let me reset this, that it's doing about 3 dBs. So, you know, another thing where it's just doing, you can really call this an EQ. So at this point I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's another EQ right here. So I've got I've got 6 EQs on this subgroup. That might be overkill. I don't know. Anyway, so this guy, I really like it a lot. So it's really you know, selective, you know, variable EQ, if you will, in regard to how this works. And you know, if it's instead of just, you know, notching at 252 hertz, it's just determining, does it need it on this hit, does it need it on this hit, and does it, so it evens it out a little bit. So really love this thing. This is just great. I recommend you playing with it. I usually will go into this high frequency limiter and start from there, and then adjust whatever, switch this guy over to here, and then adjust whatever frequency. If you hit sidechain, you can kind of hear maybe what frequency that you want to do, and then adjust your threshold. So there we go. All right, what's next? All right, my other EQ. So we got the channel strip here, which comes with Pro Tools. This is a pretty good sounding little EQ. I like it for some of the high and low and stuff. As you can see here, I'm kind of just doing a couple wide bells. Boosting a little bit of 70 hertz at 1.8 dB, and boosting a little bit of 10K, 11K at 1.2 dB. It's just a little extra sheen there on it. Let's take a look. Yeah, so nice little icing there. What's funny is this is all going to go through a couple more EQs on the master fader as well, or the master channel. So the last thing in the chain is this SSL compressor, which is another Duende plugin. This is that bus compressor that mimics the old SSL consoles. And let's see what we're doing. But I do like what it's doing. It's kind of squishing the transients a little bit and just kind of mushing everything together. Kind of nice. And I'm just kind of digging it. So that's really it for these. You can see I got a little bit of automation here on the volume channels. Probably not doing anything automation-wise on these, which I try not to automate on these, because it's going to go into the subgroup, and if I lower, say, one portion, then it's going to start hitting compressors and things a bit differently. So I kind of want to keep it all consistent going into the subgroup. So I will instead automate the subgroup. I mean, that's what it's there for. So you can see there's some different sections of the song here. I'm lowering it a little bit, but not a whole lot of automation, surprisingly, on this. That's a look at the levels. It's extremely consistent, so it probably isn't really a need for much automation. Last thing, I guess, is the reverb. I use the SSL reverb, SSL Xverb a ton. This is really my favorite reverb. I really love this thing. It's not cheap, but I think it's worth every penny. So in this one, I've got my own, presets that I have. This is my Cajon setting. Well, at least I think it is. I usually, the reverbs change from song to song depending on a lot of different factors, but I usually have something that I start with, and then, I'll tweak it from there. And in this case, this is actually a pretty quick reverb for this song, since it's a quicker feel to it. So let's take a look at the reverb. Get these guys back. Okay, so just by itself, it actually sounds kind of wet, but once you put it into this, into the mix, let's see what I'm sending here, and -9. So once you get it into the mix, though, it really doesn't sound as bad as wet. Let's see, if you have one of these, I'll just show you what I'm doing here. Not really much on the early reflection effect. I'm not doing any early reflections. The reverb time is set to 522 milliseconds. Interesting little frequency thing we've got going on there. And then filters kind of rolling off that high end and a little bit of low end as well. Now let's hear the reverb in and out in the mix.
Don't give up, I won't give up. Don't give up, no, no, no. Don't give up.
Yeah. Well, that is really about it for Cajon. You can see we got some shaker that's underneath the Cajon. And then we've got these cymbal hits as well. Little ding hits. Oops. Yeah. And not much with the cymbals going on. Just rolling off a ton of low end and mid range and boosting just a little bit of highs. But yeah, that's about it. So,
Free to be the greatest.
hopefully this has helped some people, and shown a little bit of what I'm doing mix-wise on the Cajon part. You know, if you feel like you really need to EQ something, the best thing you can take away from this is, if you feel like you need to EQ something a lot, do it in smaller increments with a number of different EQs. You know, as you saw there, I'm basically using 6 EQs. That's not including what's going to happen in the mastering. So you know, do just a little bit on each EQ. You get, you know, not only does it sound better, but you get a bit more characteristic from each plugin, which helps. And you know, I cut a lot of low end out of a lot of different instruments as well, with whether it's guitar or whether it's acoustic, or you know, whether it's guitar, vocal, or whatever. So you know, don't be afraid if you feel like you need to EQ something quite a bit, whether it's adding a ton of high end or cutting quite a bit, or adding a bunch of low end. You know, do it in incremental plugins. You know, I'm doing 6 different plugins here, not including what's actually going to happen in mastering. So I'm doing a little bit of, you know, increments in the high end. I'm cutting little bits and pieces here and there with the low end, until something that I get. You know, if you use multiple EQs, not only does it sound better, but you get different characteristics from the different EQs, which kind of helps develop the sound a little bit. And you know, you don't be afraid to cut some of those low mids and low end stuff, because it can really kind of get away from you in a mix if you're not careful. So I think that's about it with this. If you have any more comments, if you have questions, feel free to ask them. I will try to answer them as I can. And I guess that does it. Thanks for watching, everyone.